did that when you were like in sports. But there's something, I was going to start today a different way, but there's something when we were listening, when we were singing that last song, it just kind of made me think of my own journey. And I think sometimes we just have to remember, like, man, what has God done in our lives? And you know, I was once you guys. I was once a freshman. I was once a sophomore. And I was thinking about the things that I was really striving after when I was a freshman and a sophomore. And then to see the process that God had kind of has taken me and where He's kind of put me on this journey and how faithful that He has been. Like one of these events in my life that is kind of one of those events that changes your life forever happened in December of 2010. Some of you knew me back in December of 2010. You know, a little bit of background. In college, what I had wanted was to get married. Jimmy and I were talking about that this week. He basically was like, dude, every message you gave was about marriage. And it was. I was obsessed with it. And I was like a hopeless romantic, sappy, Hallmark, as worse as it gets, let's just be honest. But I talked about it every week. And I remember the last time I actually spoke about marriage was like the last sermon I had before my getting married. And I was like, this is the last time you'll ever have to hear my ugly sob story about how I'm not married. And everyone just started clapping and going crazy. It's like, okay, I get it. Joke's on me. But anyways, okay, so it was December. What led to that moment was December 2010. I'd been dating that fine lady right there for about 4 months. And I love New York. I've talked about New York before. And so I was like, well, let's go to New York during Christmas. Because what is better, what is more romantic than going to New York during Christmas with this girl that you really like? You know, it's like going to be cold outside, there's decorations, it's the city, you're going to be like cold up close because it is like cold outside. So you're just like, this is like going to be amazing. So we planned out this perfect day. So we go and we drive into Jersey, then we take the train into the Lower East End, and we go to this restaurant called Katz. Has anybody ever heard of it or been there? Okay, they're really famous for their Reubens. You have to go there, and it's in the movie When Harry Met Sally. So we went to Katz. We didn't get the Reuben. We kind of were sellouts. We got the Philly cheesesteak. How terrible is that? We're rubbing it on New York. But we got Philly cheesesteaks, and I'm sitting across from Felicia, and I look at her, and I start to begin to realize something. Like in that moment, I'm starting to realize, like, man, I think I might be falling in love with this girl. You know, we finish our meal. I go to the restroom. In the restroom, it gives me some time to actually think. And in that moment, like in the bathroom, I'm like, I love this girl. Like, I come to that realization. Like, in the bathroom. All right, for all you guys who haven't, said I love you to, a girl yet, here's the thing. Never tell that girl that you realize that you fell in love with her in the bathroom, and then never tell a bunch of people that that's, what happened. So I'm going to just, throw that out there. But anyways, I realized in the bathroom, in this moment of enlightenment, that I love this girl. And then I realized, what better day to do it than today? Today's yeah, today's the best day to do it. So we went to the UN headquarters, then we went to the Rockefeller Center. We were going to go ice skating, but we didn't end up going because it was crazy. Then we went and got some dinner. Then we got this chocolate mint tea at Argo Tea, which is incredible. And then we went to Central Park because I had planned this whole time to go on this horse-drawn carriage ride in Central Park. Truly like a Hallmark movie. I mean, it's you can't write it. So I'm like, oh my gosh, all right, so we are in this horse-drawn carriage ride. I'm like, this is the moment. It's cold, she's cuddled up, there's lights everywhere, the city's behind us, we're in Central Park. We got this horse, which is cool, and then it's I'm like, all right, this is the moment. I turn to her, and I'm like, in my deepest, most suave, hey, baby, I realized something. No, I really didn't do it like that. It's probably more hey. But I was like, hey, I realized something, and I realized today that I have fallen in love with you. I took the plunge. Have you guys, for us, whoever's said I love you first, it's such a huge plunge. It's you're putting yourself out there, and this is her response. What does that mean? Is this for real? Are you genuine? does that mean? Not exactly the way that I imagined that going in my head. And so the whole rest of the night, she was like, she's like, just keep walking forward. Like, you're real. You're a real human being. And do you love me? Like, just like, but here, the point of the story being is that all of us want that moment. All of us want that moment where someone looks at us and says, I love you. All of us. It is in all people. Like this is your first point in your bulletin, is that we all want to be loved. Whether it's a girlfriend or whether it's a boyfriend or whether it's a family member or your peer or even like your boss or your employer, we all want to be loved. And we all want to be validated. We all want to be affirmed. We all want to be admired. We all want to feel like we're valuable. We've been going through this series called Magnificent. And I kind of started out and talked about the bigness of God, how God is bigger and better than anything we can imagine. And Caleb talked about transcendence, how God is basically beyond time and space. And Ed talked about his holiness, that God, he can't even show us his face, because if he did, then it would just like destroy us. That he just has to show us his back. And Chris talked about God's faithfulness, that faithfulness is not what he does, but who he is. Then Ed talked about his brilliance or his radiance, that once we see God for who he is, like we just beam, we just radiate. And then Caleb talked about his goodness, that God is merciful and compassionate and rich in love. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. That's the last kind of attribute that we're kind of discussing is God's love. And the question that we're answering today is that in light of everything that we've talked about over the last 6 weeks, what would it mean for us that God loves us? What does that mean for us in light of everything that we've talked about? So if you guys want to flip with me to Psalm 103, that's where we're going to be today. And in Psalm 103, verses 11 through 12. For as high as the heavens are above the earth, so great is his love for those who fear him. As far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our transgressions from us. So the first point in your bulletin, the number 1, is just write down infinitely inventive. Infinitely inventive. Have you guys ever asked the question, where did love come from? Where did love originate from? Because if you look, love is something that is cross-cultural. Like I've had an opportunity to travel to different places, and it's just something that everybody wants. Not necessarily romantic love, but just the idea of love. It's cross-cultural, it's cross-regional, it's even cross-religional, if that's even a word, but it's like, it is a part of all human beings. If you would go really in any culture and ask, what is the purpose of life? You might get some answers like money, family, but the majority of the responses would probably say love. Like that's the true, like transcendent meaning of life, is to be a good person, to do good, and to love others. That there's something about love that just, kind of bonds all of us. Even people who would say that, there's no God at all, they still hold love to the highest of virtues. But let me ask you a question. Let's just hypothetically say there is no God. If there is no God, and love is the greatest of all inventions or human concoctions or virtues of mankind, then wouldn't it make sense for all of us to say, man, if love is the thing that we want more than anything else, then we should go back in time and find out the human being who created love, and we should worship him. Don't you think that would make sense? Like, man, this person came up with the thing that everybody wants. That person, there's something transcendent about that person. There's something other about that person to come up with something that every single human being wants. We should worship them. But the reality is that's just not true. Like that love is not a man-made concoction. It has to be something outside of us. It has to be something outside of us. John in the book of 1 John, he talks about how God is love. A.W. Tozer said this about that passage. He says that this doesn't mean that love equals God, or that love and God are identical or interchangeable, as if we can say that love is God, as if like love came first before God, but that love is actually a describing word of God. If I say like, Ed is kind, I'm not saying kindness is Ed. I'm saying that that's an attribute describing Ed. So when we look at God, when we see that passage of God is love, it is saying that God came first and that love is actually an attribute of Him, that love is an expression of Him, that God is the source of that and love flows out of it. So then we have this verse in verse 11. Verse 11, for as high as the heavens are above the earth, so great is His love for those who fear Him. So what does this actually mean? Because it's basically saying that we can measure love by looking at the heavens. We can see like how great God's love for us is basically measured as high as the heavens. So let's kind of think of, how high actually are the heavens? Have you guys ever thought of that before? Let's just say, for example, between Chris and I right now, there's 1 foot. Sorry, Chris, I'm creeping on your space. There's 1 foot between us. There's 5,280 feet in a mile. So if we stood right here and we went those 5,280 feet that way, 1 mile would get us to Starbucks. So 1 mile would get us a latte. Now if we went outside and we looked up and we looked at the atmosphere and looked at the heavens, basically that to the edge of the atmosphere is 62 miles. So 62 lattes in order to get to the top of the atmosphere. But let's think, okay, we can't really see much of the heavens, we can't really see stars during the day, so let's just say, it's like 9 o'clock at night, and we're outside, we're in the middle of the city, we're looking at the few stars that there are, we kind of pinpoint the Big Dipper, and we're like, okay, well, how far is the Big Dipper? Because that's kind of like an indication of how high the heavens are. Well, the Big Dipper is 123 light years away. Okay. Hold on here. That's a lot of lattes. We're going to talk about that. So let's answer the question, well, what is a light year? Have you guys ever, you're probably thinking, what is a light year? A light year, 186,000 miles per second is the speed of light. So you do a lot of math, and it ends up being this number. That's how many miles is a light year. That's 5,865,696,000,000 miles. Okay, so just stew on that number. Oh, I'm sorry. Stew on that number as I cross over it. And so let's get to the Big Dipper. We are in we're in the solar system. Our solar system is basically a cul-de-sac in the universe. If the universe is like this massive country or even the world, we live in a little cul-de-sac. You go past the solar system is only 4 light years. Then you go past the solar interstellar, I had it written down, it's like a solar interstellar neighborhood, that's at 30 light years. Then you finally get to this Big Dipper at 123 times that number. So you're like, okay, well that's just what we see in the city. What did the writer actually see? The writer actually saw the farthest that a human eye can see is the Andromeda galaxy. So you're probably thinking, well, how far is the Andromeda galaxy? Okay, well, I'm going to tell you. So you go past the Big Dipper. Then you actually go out of our Milky Way, which is 100,000 light years, 100,000 times that amount. And you go to the next galaxy, which is the Andromeda galaxy, and that is 2.6 million light years. Think of that, 2.6 million light years. I had an opportunity, my family kind of has a cabin in Wyoming, and you step outside and you kind of look up at the heavens, and it's in the middle of the mountains, and you can just see millions upon millions upon millions of stars. That's what we're talking about, 2.6 million light years away. That's what the writer right here is seeing. But the writer right here actually is hindered. He's not seeing the whole picture. Because now we have the Hubble telescope. And the Hubble telescope allows us to see that. What that is you go past the Andromeda galaxy at 2.6 million miles, and then you go past the Virgo supercluster, which is our supercluster, which is at 100 million light years. Then you go past our supercluster complex, which is the Pisces Cetus, which is 1 billion light years away. And then you get to what the Hubble telescope can actually see, and that's 13 billion light years. 13 billion multiplied by 5 trillion and change. That's how far the heavens actually are. But that's actually not how far the heavens actually are, because that's only what is observable. That's only what we have been able to see. There's still a universe that we have not even discovered, that we've never even seen before. We have no idea how far it actually goes. And on top of that, it keeps expanding. So when you think of the love of God being as high as the heavens, it's not something it's not, it's beyond anything that we can imagine. It's beyond anything that we can actually observe. It's beyond, calculate that. 13 billion multiplied by 5 trillion. I don't even know, is that a sex or septillion? Something? That's a number that we can't even fathom. That is the love of God. And the second, kind of the sub-point, is that His love is infinite. His love is infinite. Some people ask me the question, why would God create us? I've never thought that. Why would God create us? Because He has so much love to give, that His love had to manifest itself somehow. It had to be expressed somehow. When Felicia and I, when we were thinking about Zayden, we weren't like, oh man, we gotta have a kid. It's our duty it's our obligation to have a child. We have to. No, we did it as an expression of love. We wanted to share our lives with Him. We wanted to love Him. We had love to give. And that is the reason why we had Him. It's no different with God. He has love to give, and He wants to share Himself with us. That's the reason that we were created. But there's a problem. And the problem is that we take this love, we take this infinite love, and we do two things with it. The first thing is that we reduce it to something really small. We reduce it to something small that we can just kind of put in our back pocket and carry around with us, or we just reject it entirely. I've seen three things. I've seen kind of three types of people in my days. The first is I would say this is really myself. It's just that the love of God is something that's just kind of, have you ever felt like it just is you just kind of take it for granted? It's just kind of mundane. It's just kind of ordinary. It's just kind of God loves me. That's cool. Yeah. It's not a big deal. It doesn't evoke any emotional response. It doesn't really evoke any response. It's just it's cool. I'm loved. That's awesome. And it is. You just put it in your back pocket and you're yeah, I'm just going to go through the rest of my day. And God loves me. That's cool. Reduce Him to something really, really small. The second kind of person that I've seen is that we are reluctant to respond to this love. Because if we respond to His love, that means that we have to change. That means that we might actually have to give up control of our lives. That means that we might actually lose something. We might lose ourselves. And it's just a lot easier to kind of go through your day and just be about yourself and not actually have to come under something, or not actually have to respond to something. And the third type of person is that those of you who are afraid. And I don't know where you got the fear from. Probably just some experience. Maybe you've been hurt. Maybe you have some wounds and some scars. Maybe people who should have loved you actually didn't love you. And then when you see like, oh man, this love of God, you're basically like, why would this love be anything different than anything else that I've experienced? So I'm just not, why? Like I'm not going to say I love you and it just be dangled there. Maybe that's where you're at. It kind of reminds me of this passage. I'm just going to read it out loud. It's this passage from Jeremiah 2:5. And God is basically talking to Jeremiah, and he says, "What wrong did your fathers find in me, that they went far from me, and went after worthlessness and became worthless?" It's as if God is basically saying, like, what wrong have you found in me? Like, everything that we've talked about over the last 6 weeks, if we were to kind of put God on like a little examining stand, it's as if he's like, what wrong have you found in me? What do you think's wrong? Why? Why won't you receive me? Why won't you receive my love? Why won't you respond? What's wrong? Like, I think the wrong is in us. I think the wrong is our selfishness, is our sin. And what this does is it disconnects us. It distances us. It causes us to be just far from God. And then you have a verse like verse 12. We have this sin that we're distanced from God, and then we have verse 12, and it says, as far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our transgressions from us. So we have this example of east to the west. So how far is the east to the west? Well, let's think about it here. We have a little globe. Let's say we are here, we're here in Columbus, Ohio, and it's like, just go west, and keep going west. So we go from Columbus to LA, LA to Hong Kong, then to Mumbai, then to Dubai, then to Paris, then to New York, back to Columbus. But just keep going west. Then we go to LA, then we go back to Hong Kong, to Mumbai, to Dubai, to Paris, to New York. Let's go to a different place. Let's go to Seattle. Let's go to Beijing. Let's go to London. Let's go to Miami. Let's go to Sydney, Australia. Let's just keep going. When you go west, you just keep going around and around and around and around and around and around. The distance between east and west is infinite. What God is basically saying here is that my forgiveness is infinite. That's the second subpoint, is that his forgiveness is infinite. That he removes the distance, that no matter how far the distance is, no matter how far you've disconnected yourself, he's like, that distance is not insurmountable for me. Like, however you reduced me to something smaller, however you've rejected me, that distance is not far from me. Like, I had a patient, I work at the hospital as like a part-time nurse's aide, and I've been doing that for like 6.5 years. And I had this patient recently, and she's 28 years old. And she has basically destroyed her heart. Like, she's a heroin addict. And she looks at me, and she's like, she knows that I'm a pastor. She's like, Andy, I know that I'm so far away from God. And I look at her, and I'm like, he isn't far from you. Her perception is, man, there's just nothing. I have there's an infinite amount of miles away from God and I. And the reality is, there isn't for him. He's right there, right smack dab, right next to him. If we will only see him, if we will only see who he is. The second point is intricately involved. Is that God is he has infinitely invented love, and that this love is intricately involved. In verse 13 through 16. As a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear him. For he knows how we are formed. He remembers that we are dust. The life of mortals is like grass. They flourish like a flower in the field. The wind blows over it and it is gone, and its place remembers it no more. As you guys know, I just became a dad, and it was probably the most unbelievable experience that I've probably had in my life. And what happened is basically, it was the morning of January 31st, it's 2 a.m. Felicia wakes me up, she's like, I think my water broke. Then she stands up, and I'm literally watching her water break. And I'm like, oh crap, that means we're going to have to get in the car. So this is real now. You know, like, we're in the car, we fly down to Ohio State, we make it to Ohio State, they put us into triage. Triage, they basically check, like, you know, did her water break? Like, how far is she dilated? She's dilated 4 centimeters. You have to be kind of like 10 in order to push out a baby. So she's 4, and they're like, all right, this is legit, this is real, let's get her into a room. So they put her into a room. It's like 6 o'clock now, 4 hours later, they check her again, only 4 centimeters. So they're like, just go and walk. Go and walk, because when you walk, you know, gravity happens, and it just kind of like pushes everything down. So we're like walking like maniacs in the middle of the night, like groggy, just like we look like zombies. And it's like, they check her again, she's at 4 centimeters. 2 hours later, she's still at 4 centimeters. And it's like, what in the heck is going on? Like, they're gonna have to do surgery, they're gonna have to like cut her open, like what, how, like we have to like, what's gonna happen here? They tell her where we're gonna have to put you on Pitocin. Now, Pitocin is oxytocin. It's like a synthetic form of oxytocin. Oxytocin like constricts stuff. It gives you contractions. And so, in order to do Pitocin, you have to be monitored. She wanted like a water labor, and so we couldn't do that. So she's like, you know, should we do this? Should we not? She's like, all right, well, let's do this. So they give her Pitocin. Still, after 2 hours, she's at 4 centimeters. Like, this guy is so stubborn. What's going on here? He doesn't talk about him. So eventually, she goes into a shower. And she goes in the shower, and she's just like focused. Her mom and I are like, we're not even a part of that. Like, the midwives are just doing their thing. She's just like a champ. And like in an hour, she's from 4 centimeters to 8 centimeters. So then they get her out. They put her on the bed. In about 15 minutes, she's from 8 centimeters to 10 centimeters. To the point that I can see that full, huge, like, faux hawk sticking out. Like, I'm like, he's right there. Like, this is unbelievable. So for 2 hours, I'm holding a leg, and she's like pushing, and he just won't come out. Like, for 2 hours. And we are thinking, like, none of us are saying it, but we're like, oh my, like, he might not come out, we might have to have surgery. But it's 2:20 p.m., and I'm holding a leg, and I feel like I'm like a jockey, like trying to like, come on. She looks like a prize fighter in like the 15th round. She's like, her mom gives her some water, like she spits it up, it's like dribbled all over, and her mom's like, oh, I'll go and like wipe it up. She's like, feels good. And I'm like, man, she is in the zone right now. Like, she has no idea what's going on. She is just like she's in the zone. So it's 2:24. I'm holding this leg still, and I'm like, come on. I'm like screaming at her, like, come on, you can do it, come on. Like, push. And finally, like he pops out, head pops out, then he does a little shimmy shake, his shoulders pop out, they flip him up, put him on her, and my thought is, he is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. He is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Start bawling. What do you think God thinks of you? What do you think God thinks of you? The truth is, we project the image of our dads onto God. I don't know if you guys knew that, but we project the image of our dads onto God. Like maybe your dad abandoned you. Maybe you feel like that's how God is. That He kind of just like threw everything into motion and then just like left and is like, peace. Like I don't have no interaction with my creation anymore. Or maybe He's just emotionally distant and cold. Where like He put everything into motion. He's like there, but He's just kind of like, I'm not going to give you any attention. I'm just going to like sit here. Maybe He's just kind of weak and passive. where it's like you see the things happening in your life and you see the things happening in this world, but it doesn't seem like God cares or He really has the power to do anything. Or maybe your dad is angry and abusive, and you're constantly in fear of His wrath. And you don't know when He's going to be pissed off and when He's going to punish you. Or maybe you feel like your dad is just kind of like this slave driver who has this high standard that if you don't meet this standard of perfection or his expectation, then he's going to be disappointed in you. Maybe that's how you view God. But that's not what we see here. In verse 13, it says that as a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear Him. He is a father of compassion. When I look at my son, I don't get angry. I don't feel emotionally distant. I don't want to abandon him. Like, I have compassion. The reality is that when I'm holding Zayden, I have the power to protect or I have the power to destroy. I don't know if any of you guys thought that when you're like holding him and you're like, oh my gosh, like his head literally like could fall off, like he's so fragile. But it's true. Like if we like took Zayden outside and just left him, he would die. Like he can't crawl, he can't move on his own. If we would just say, hey, I'm not going to feed him anymore, he wouldn't be fed. Like we have that, we are the source of life for him. In the same way, God is the source of life for us. But He doesn't want to destroy us in the same way that I don't want to put my son outside and make him freeze. I have compassion on him. Like I love him. Like I want the best for him. I want to protect him. Like here we are dependent little infants, and God just wants so much for us. It says in verse 14 that He knows how we are formed. He remembers that we are dust. It's like He knows that we are fragile. He was there in the very beginning. He knows how Zayden was formed. Like He was knitting Zayden in the womb, just like He was knitting me in the womb, just like He was knitting all of you guys in the womb. And this is what Caleb was saying, just like He was knitting everybody in the womb years and years and years and centuries and millennia back. Like He knows every one of our days from the beginning to the end. He knows exactly what's going to happen, how everything was formed. Like He knows us that intimately. And He has plans for us. Have you ever thought that? God actually has a plan for you. When I look at Zayden, I don't have an expectation on his life, but I have a dream for him. I have a hope. My hope is that we have this huge map of the world in our office. And my hope is that he would spend his days sitting in front of that map and just being like, oh my gosh, I want to go there, and I want to go there, and I want to go there, and I want to just love the nations, and I want to see all the things that God has made. Like lately, I've just been obsessed with Africa. I've always loved Africa, but specifically for some reason, I've just been obsessed with Africa. We've been playing Nigerian jazz music for you guys in Cyprus. You know what I'm talking about, and it is awesome, by the way. But I've just been playing that constantly around him because I'm like, man, in my wildest dream, he would love the continent of Africa, and then he would go to the continent of Africa. That's my wildest dream for him. Do you not believe that God has some wild dreams for you? Some wild hopes that are beyond anything that we can imagine. He knows us from the beginning to the end. He knit us in the womb. See, this is the thing. God didn't just create us, and then He also didn't just like get involved in our lives and like take care of us physically, meet our needs, knowing our whole time and everything like that, but He also like actually came down to us. This is the craziest thing in this passage. It actually came to us. And this is the third thing, that He is intimately invested. That this love is intimately invested. Verse 17, but from everlasting to everlasting, the Lord's love is with those who fear him, and his righteousness with their children's children. That everlasting to everlasting is basically like forever and ever, like eternal. He's basically saying like, my love is with those forever. My love is going to be with you forever. In Leviticus 26, this is what God has to say to the Israelites. Verse 11, he says, I will put my dwelling place among you, and I will not abhor you. I will walk among you and be your God, and you will be my people. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt so that you would no longer be slaves to the Egyptians. I broke the bars of your yoke and enabled you to walk with heads held high. Well, let's focus on 11. I will put my dwelling place among you. Just listen to that. I will put my dwelling place among you. I will walk among you and be your God, and you will be my people. This is a prophecy about what is going to happen, and what did happen is that God literally came down to us and walked with us. Like, Jesus came down in the form of a baby like Zayden. Like, dependent. Experienced the same things that we've experienced. Those exact same things in life. Like, God actually experiences those exact same things. Lived a perfect life. Lived a life of infinite love and a life of infinite forgiveness. And then lives out the ultimate act of love by laying down his life for us in order that we can actually bridge that gap. So in order for us to actually be truly intimate with God. Think of that. The God of the universe put himself into our skin. That, you don't see that in any other religion or any other doctrine. That is unbelievable. God came down in the form of us. But then, this is the thing that's even crazier about this, is that God doesn't just stop there. He doesn't just like, hey, I'm Jesus, I'm on the scene, and then like, I'm resurrected and I go to heaven and that's it. He doesn't end the story right there. Because then we have a passage in John 14, and just listen with me. This passage just knocks my socks off all the time. He says, if anyone loves me, this is Jesus talking to his disciples. He says, if anyone loves me, he will obey my teaching. My Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our home with him. My Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our home with him. This is Jesus basically talking to his disciples saying that, beyond me, after me, like there's actually something better. And that better is my Spirit. And my Spirit is actually going to come into you. God, in his Spirit, is going to come into you and make his home in you and dwell in you. Let's think about that for a second here. The God of the universe, who's infinitely loving and infinitely forgiving. Do you understand that? This is the last point in that little sub-point. Like, do you understand that the God of the universe, who's infinitely greater than anything that you can imagine, not only loves you, but wants to dwell, wants to make his home in you, in us. This, I don't know if this is like that up there, this is a lot. But just in light of everything that we've talked about over the last 6 weeks, in light of his bigness, his holiness, his transcendence, his brilliance, his faithfulness, his goodness, in light of all of that, that God actually wants to make his home and dwell inside of you. That blows me away. How can that be? That is unbelievable. So what does this mean for us? And how will we respond? What it means to us is that no matter what, he is there. If we receive this love, if we respond to this love, if we're like, yes, God, you can make your home in me, what that means is that wherever we go, no matter where we are at, he is with us. That's your little A. Like I had a lot of I've spent a year in Jordan, living in Jordan, and I had a lot of moments in Jordan, kind of probably stupid moments where I jumped into the cars of strangers and I could have been killed. And in this one moment in particular, I was meeting one of my friends, and we met at like a coffee shop, and he's like, "I will take you to my home." And I'm like, "All right, that's fine, as long as I get home at some time tonight." He's like, "I can't go right now, but my cousin, he will take you. Like, guess him, he will take you." And I'm like, "All right, well, who's Gaslam?" I've never met this guy ever before, and he's like, "He will take you. We will be there in 5 minutes." I'm like, "All right." So I'm foolish, and I'm like, "Well, I'll just jump in this guy's car, and like, we'll go." And so I'm like talking to Gaslam, and I'm like, I find out that he is in the army, in the Jordanian army. We're driving in the middle of the desert, and it occurs to me that no one knows where I'm at right now, and that he could literally like leave me for dead in the middle of the desert. And it would be completely no problem. The Jordanians would be like, "He is part of the military. I'm sure there was a reason. It's not a big deal." You know, like, and I'm like, what the heck? This is probably not a very wise decision. But in that moment, it's just like, God just speaks in that moment, and he's like, "I am there. Like, I am here with you. Like, you're not alone. Like, I am right here." That's the beauty of this. The beauty of this is that God is so intimately invested in our lives that wherever we go, he is right there. Whether we are with thousands of people, like at a passion event or at a football game, or whether we are by ourselves in the middle of the mountains, in the middle of the desert. Wherever in this world, wherever in this universe, God is with us. The second thing is that you can't give what you haven't received. The reality is we have to respond to this love. We have to respond to this love. If we are ever going to be people who are going to give big acts of love and be people who run after a big love, then we have to receive this love. Christ is the source of this love. The reality is that we have to give it away. We have to be people that give it away. That when we respond and receive this love, we have to give it away. It can't be something that is stored. It has to be something that is shared. That has to be our response. It's basically like, God, yes, I will receive your love. But I can't just receive it and then just sit on it. I have to share it. I have to give it away. That has to be our response today. You know, can you imagine what it would look like if we were a people who lived out the infinite love and forgiveness on this campus, in this city, and in this world? Can you imagine if we were people who realize that God actually dwells in us, gives us the power to live out his life and his love and forgiveness through us to this world? Can you imagine what that would look like? What is possible? Can you imagine the plan that God has for your life that is just so much bigger than what we've concocted for ourselves? That is what he is inviting us into. So how will you respond? Every single one of you, all of us, we're in the same boat. No matter where your background is, we're all in the same boat. And really, we just need to say yes. We just need to say yes. Like, I have created distance between, God, I've created distance between you, but I know that you are right here. I know that you want to love me. I know that you want to forgive me, and I'm going to say yes to that. And then I'm going to just say I love you. And I'm just going to receive this love, and then I'm just going to try to give it away as much as I can. That's all of our responses, wherever you're at in the spectrum. Whether you are a Christian or not a Christian, that is our response every day. Say yes. Not what does it mean, but to say yes, I love you. So I'm just going to finish this in prayer. I'm going to ask the band to come back up. I'm going to worship another song. But just be thinking about that. Like, where are you at? Are you receiving God's love? So, Heavenly Father, God, I just pray that we would be a people who would understand, who would realize that your love is infinite, that your forgiveness is infinite, that you are just infinitely more than what we can imagine. God, help us to realize that you are a caring Father, a compassionate Father, who loves us and has big plans for us. God, that literally in the same way that I hold my son and I just swoop in and take him in my arms, that is what you do to us, God, that you just carry us in your arms. And God, that we are not going to squirm away, that we're not going to try to get out of your grasp, but we're basically going to say, wherever you go, you just walk and we're just going to like sit and stare at you. We're along for the ride. We just want to observe, be a part of what you're doing. God, share yourself with us. May we bask in who you are, God. May we trust you. May we say yes. May we, in our very small, minute ways, give away and